born into a house that carries a name people recognize, but not one they fear. It is written in ink thick enough to open doors, but thin enough to stop short of the inner rooms. Your family is noble technically, the kind that still bows correctly, still keeps records, still burns incense at the right times. But your rank sits low on the ladder, far below the families whose surnames move armies or end careers with a whisper. From the day you arrive, wrapped in cloth that smells faintly of boiled herbs and smoke, your future is already shaped by lines written long before you could read. Your home is not poor. There are tiled roofs instead of thatch. Wooden pillars are polished, not splintered. Servants exist, though not many, and they work quietly because they know they can be replaced. You grow up hearing the sounds of brushing silk, the clack of abacus beads, the scrape of bamboo slips being stacked and restacked. Paper is precious. So is time. Both are spent carefully. Even as a child, you learn that waste is dangerous, not because of hunger, but because waste draws attention, and attention is expensive. You do not belong to the great clans who marry into the imperial house. You also do not belong to the mass of commoners who work fields and pay taxes and grain. You sit in the narrow middle space where expectations are high and rewards are limited. Your parents know this. They never say it directly, but you hear it in the way conversations stop when certain names are mentioned. You see it in the way your father straightens his robe when a higher-ranking official passes, and how his smile tightens, just slightly, when he is ignored. From early on, you are taught what you are not. You are not destined for the highest offices. You are not free to act without consequence. You are not invisible enough to escape notice, nor powerful enough to survive it unscathed. Your birth is not celebrated loudly. It is acknowledged properly. A son is good. Another mouth is manageable. Another future must be planned. Your childhood smells of ink and dust. You sit on woven mats while tutors recite texts that have shaped men for centuries. The words are heavy with instruction, obedience, filial piety, proper conduct, order. You learn to copy characters until your wrist aches and your fingers stain black. Mistakes are corrected without anger, but never without note. Every error is recorded, even if only in memory. You learn quickly that perfection is not expected, but discipline is. There are games, but they are structured. There's laughter, but it is measured. You are praised not for creativity, but for restraint. When you ask questions, they are answered, but the answers often point back to hierarchy. Why does this official sit closer to the magistrate? Because of rank. Why can one family avoid certain taxes? Because of history. Why can't you do the same? Because your name does not reach far enough. At meals, seating matters. You notice who sits where long before you understand why. Elders closest to the center, juniors on the edges, guests ranked carefully, never randomly. Even bowls and chopsticks follow invisible rules. Nothing is accidental. You learn to read these patterns the way others learn to read faces. It becomes instinct. Later, it will keep you alive. Your parents speak often about duty. Not loudly, not dramatically, but constantly. Duty to family, duty to ancestors, duty to the state. These duties overlap, sometimes uncomfortably. When they do, the solution is rarely fair. It is simply necessary. You absorb this logic slowly, the way water soaks into cloth. By the time you're old enough to question it, it already feels natural. Outside your household, the world reinforces the lesson. Markets are loud, crowded, full of smells, fish, oil, sweat. But you move through them as an observer, not a participant. You are reminded to keep your robe clean, your posture straight. People bow to you, but not deeply. The bow is polite, not deferential. You return it with care. Too little, and you insult. Too much, and you embarrass yourself. balance becomes your constant concern. You hear stories of examinations, of men who rise through brilliance alone. These stories are told carefully, usually ending before the harder parts begin. Your tutors mention talent, but they emphasize lineage more. Exams can open doors, they say, but only to rooms that are already assigned to you. You begin to understand that effort is necessary, but not sufficient. This knowledge settles into you quietly, like a second spine. As you grow older, the pressure tightens. Your education intensifies. More texts, more rules, more reminders that your family's survival depends on your behavior. A single misstep can erase generations of careful positioning. You feel this weight even before you are given real responsibility. It shows up in small things. The way your mother corrects your tone, the way your father watches you when guests are present, the way silence stretches when you speak out of turn. At night, you lie awake listening to the creak of wood cooling, the distant bark of dogs, the faint sound of someone practicing calligraphy by lamplight. You imagine futures that are never named directly. Clerkships, minor posts, service under men who will never know your full name. You imagine wearing official robes that command respect from commoners but invite contempt from those above you. You do not yet resent this. You are still too young. Instead, you accept it as the shape of the world. Your body is trained along with your mind. You practice proper walking, proper standing, proper bowing. You learn how to hold your breath when nervous, how to keep your face neutral when criticized. Emotional control is praised more than strength. You're not being raised to lead men into battle. You're being raised to function smoothly within a machine that values predictability above all else. By the time you reach adolescence, you understand something fundamental without ever being taught explicitly. Your life is not about ascent. It is about maintenance. Holding position, avoiding collapse, making yourself useful enough to keep, but not impressive enough to threaten. This understanding does not come with anger. It comes with clarity. And clarity in this world is both a shield and a cage. You have not yet entered official life. You have not yet faced the full weight of the state. But the framework is already built around you. Your birth placed you inside it. Your education reinforced it. Your family depends on it. You are a low-ranked noble in ancient China. And before you ever take an oath, before you ever hold a seal, the system has already decided what kind of man you are allowed to become. Your formal training begins before anyone calls it that. There's no ceremony, no announcement that childhood has ended. One day, the lessons simply grow heavier, the rules tighter, the margin for error thinner. You are expected to understand this without being told. That, in itself, is part of the training. The room where you study smells of ink, old wood, and breath held too long. Scrolls are stacked carefully, their edges worn smooth by generations of fingers like yours. The tutor sits upright, never slouching, never rushing. His voice is calm, almost gentle, which somehow makes mistakes feel worse. He does not shout. He repeats. Repetition is the punishment. You copy passages again and again until the characters feel carved into your hand rather than written by it. The texts are familiar now. You have seen them since childhood, but familiarity does not make them lighter. They are about order, about hierarchy, about knowing your place and performing it correctly. Filial obedience comes first. Loyalty to the ruler follows closely behind. Personal desire appears only as something to be controlled, redirected, or quietly erased. You're not taught to ask what you want. You are taught to ask what is required. Every lesson reinforces the same idea from a different angle. History teaches you that dynasties fall when order breaks down. Philosophy teaches you that harmony depends on everyone fulfilling their role. Ritual teaches you how to embody that role with your body before your mind fully agrees. Even poetry, which you once thought might offer escape, turns out to be another discipline. The poems you study praise restraint, balance, endurance. Excess emotion is framed as immaturity. Silence, when appropriate, is treated as wisdom. Your days fall into a rhythm that leaves little space for wandering thoughts. Wake early, wash, dress correctly, eat quickly but politely, study, practice calligraphy, memorize, recite, correct posture, correct tone, correct expression. Meals are still social, but now they are instructional. A raised eyebrow from an elder can mean you spoke too soon. A pause too long can suggest hesitation, which is noted. Everything is noted, even if nothing is written down. You are taught to speak carefully, not just what you say, but how you say it and when. You learn which phrases soften disagreement and which ones escalate it. You learn that asking a question can be safer than making a statement, but only if the question sounds ignorant rather than challenging. You practice humility until it becomes automatic, even when you know the answer. There's physical training as well, though it is secondary. You're not being shaped into a warrior. You're being shaped into someone who can endure long hours, long silences, long subordination. You learn to stand still without shifting your weight. You learn to kneel without fidgeting. Your legs ache during rituals that last longer than seems necessary. No one acknowledges the discomfort. Endurance is assumed. Your family watches this process closely, not with warmth, but with attention. Your progress is discussed quietly, often in terms of suitability rather than success. Suitable for service, suitable for office, suitable for marriage alliances that will not overreach. Praise is rare and measured. Concern is constant, though rarely voiced. You understand that your performance reflects backward as much as forward. You're caring more than your own future. Outside the house, the world begins to respond to you differently. You're no longer treated as a child, but you're not yet treated as an equal. People speak around you rather than to you. Conversations pause when you enter, then resume with adjusted language. You notice which topics disappear. You notice who avoids eye contact and who holds it just a second longer, testing where you stand. You attend gatherings with other young men of similar rank. These are not friendships so much as mutual observations. Everyone is polite. Everyone is careful. You trade compliments and measure jokes. No one reveals too much. You all know that comparison is constant and quiet. Someone will advance, someone will stall, someone will fail and vanish from these gatherings altogether. The system does not announce its decisions. It lets time do the work. Examinations loom in the background of every lesson. They are spoken of with respect, sometimes even reverence. Officially, they reward merit. Unofficially, they sort people within limits already defined by birth. You prepare anyway, not because you expect miracles, but because not preparing would be unforgivable. Failure due to lack of effort carries more shame than failure due to structural limits. You learn to internalize responsibility for outcomes you do not fully control. There are moments, usually late at night, when the discipline feels overwhelming. Your fingers cramp from writing. Your eyes blur from reading by dim light. The room is quiet except for the soft scratch of brush on paper and the occasional cough from another student in a nearby room. In these moments, you feel the weight of expectations settle heavily on your chest. You're being molded, not asked. Shaped, not consulted. Religion threads quietly through your training. Ritual offerings. Respect for ancestors. A sense that order is not just social, but cosmic. Disrupting your role is framed not merely as disobedience, but as imbalance. This makes resistance feel dangerous in ways that go beyond punishment. It feels wrong, even when no one is watching. As the years pass, something shifts inside you. Not rebellion, not acceptance either. Something closer to calculation. You begin to understand the system well enough to navigate it rather than simply endure it. You learn when to speak and when silence serves you better. You learn that appearing diligent can sometimes matter more than being exceptional. You learn that surviving this phase is less about brilliance and more about consistency. By the end of your training, you are competent. Not remarkable, not forgettable, exactly what the system prefers. You can write cleanly, speak correctly, bow at the right angle, and endure long days without visible strain. You understand your limits and, more importantly, you understand that exceeding them is often riskier than staying within them. You are ready now. Not in the sense of ambition, but in the sense of utility. The education has done its work. It has not made you free. It has made you predictable. And in a world built on hierarchy and control, predictability is the first qualification for service. Your entry into official life is quiet. There's no dramatic promotion, no ceremony that marks the moment you become part of the state. One day you are still studying. The next you are assigned. A post appears, modest and specific, wrapped in language that suggests trust but carries little authority. You accept it without hesitation. Refusal is not an option people like you are given. Your first office sits on the edge of relevance. It is close enough to power that you can feel its gravity, but far enough that you cannot influence its direction. The building smells of damp paper, old ink, and bodies that spend too many hours indoors. Desks are arranged carefully. Nothing is placed for comfort. Everything is placed for order. You are shown where to sit, where to store your seals, where to stand when a superior enters. These details matter more than the work itself, at least at first. Your tasks are clear and endless. Copy reports, review tax records, compare numbers that never quite match, carry documents between offices, stand silently during meetings where decisions are made that you will later be responsible for enforcing. You learn quickly that your role is not to decide, but to ensure decisions flow smoothly downward. Errors reflect poorly on you. Success reflects upward, disappearing into names larger than yours. You are paid, technically. The stipend arrives on time, usually. It is enough to maintain your household at a respectable level, provided nothing goes wrong. Nothing ever goes perfectly. Clothing wears out. Gifts are expected. Travel costs accumulate. You discover that holding office is expensive in ways no tutor ever mentioned. Appearances must be maintained. You cannot look underpaid. You cannot admit strain. Both would suggest inadequacy. Your superiors vary. Some are indifferent, barely aware of you as an individual. Others are meticulous, correcting minor mistakes with surgical precision. A few are openly contemptuous, using their rank to remind you of your place whenever possible. You respond the same way to all of them, with politeness, with efficiency, with restraint. Anger is useless here, so is pride. Meetings teach you more than texts ever did. You watch how higher-ranking officials speak, interrupt, and redirect conversations. You notice who is listened to and who is merely tolerated. You see how decisions are framed as moral when they are administrative, and administrative when they are political. You learn that responsibility flows downward, while credit moves in the opposite direction. Outside the office, your life narrows. You wake before sunrise. You return home after dark. Meals become functional. Conversations at home revolve around logistics rather than ideas. Your family adjusts to your absence without complaint. They know this is what service looks like. You feel a dull pride mixed with fatigue. You are doing what was expected. That is supposed to be enough. Social interactions change subtly. Neighbors bow a little deeper. Shopkeepers speak more carefully. Commoners treat you with a cautious respect that fades quickly if you enforce something they dislike. You learn how fragile that respect is. One order, delivered on behalf of someone you have never met, can undo years of quiet goodwill. You are reminded that to the people below you, you are the system. To the people above you, you are a tool. Paper dominates your days. Bamboo slips, silk documents, folded sheets marked with seals and signatures. You handle records that determine land ownership, labor obligations, punishment. You rarely see the consequences directly. You read about them in neat columns and formal language. Fines, confiscations, relocations. Everything sounds reasonable on paper. You know better, but knowing does not grant you power. Occasionally, you are sent into the field to observe, to verify, to report. These trips are uncomfortable reminders of how far removed the office is from reality. Villages smell of earth and animals. Faces are lined with exhaustion. People listen carefully to your words, searching for hints of mercy or threat. You choose your phrasing carefully. Too harsh, and you invite resentment. Too soft, and you invite scrutiny from above. Balance again becomes survival. You are expected to be incorruptible, at least in appearance. Bribes are discussed as moral failures, yet gifts circulate constantly. Refusing them entirely marks you as naive or uncooperative. Accepting too much marks you as dangerous. You learn the unspoken rules. What can be taken, what must be refused, what should be redirected upward. Ethics here are not about purity, they are about calibration. Your position offers no protection from fear. Mistakes carry consequences. A misfiled report, a delayed message, a misunderstood order. Any of these can end your career quietly. There's rarely a chance to defend yourself. Investigations move quickly when they target low-ranking officials. You learn to double-check everything, then check again. Sleep becomes lighter. Your mind runs through lists even when you are not working. You watch others like you rise slightly, then stall. You watch some fall. A colleague disappears from the office one week. His desk is cleared. His name is no longer mentioned. No explanation is offered. You understand the message? Stability is conditional. Loyalty is assumed. Survival depends on remaining useful and unremarkable. Ambition becomes complicated. You still want progress, but you understand its limits. Advancement is possible, but incremental, slow, dependent on favors, timing, and the missteps of others. You learn to temper your expectations. Hoping too much makes disappointment sharper. Hoping too little makes stagnation unbearable. You settle into a narrow band of acceptable desire. At times, you feel the weight of the contradiction you live inside. You enforce rules you did not design. You represent authority you do not possess. You absorb resentment meant for others. You speak with the voice of the state while lacking the ability to change its tone. This does not feel heroic. It feels administrative. As years pass, the work does not become easier. It becomes familiar. Familiarity dulls the sharp edges but deepens the fatigue. You know the patterns now. The cycles of reporting, the seasonal pressures, the political winds that shift without warning. You adjust your behavior accordingly, not out of cowardice, but out of understanding. You are now fully inside the system, not at its center, not at its edges, somewhere in between, where most of the weight is carried. Your training prepared you for this. Your birth confined you to it. Your competence sustains it. You have become exactly what the system needed, a low-rank noble who keeps the machine running without ever asking where it is going. Daily life settles into a pattern that is neither dramatic nor peaceful. It is simply persistent. You wake before the sun, not because you must, but because sleeping longer feels irresponsible. The household stirs quietly. A servant lights a small fire. The smell of warm water and ash fills the air as you wash and dress. Your robe is clean but not new. New attracts comment. Comment invites attention. Attention is rarely kind to people like you. Breakfast is brief, rice, vegetables, tea that tastes faintly bitter. You eat enough to function, not enough to linger. There's always something waiting at the office, even if no one has told you what it is yet. That uncertainty follows you out the door. It sits in your chest as you walk the familiar roads, passing walls you have memorized stone by stone. The office greets you with the same stale smell every morning. Paper, ink, sweat, and time. You take your place without ceremony. Someone hands you a bundle of documents. Another nods, already distracted. No one asks how you are. That question does not exist here. Work begins when you arrive and ends when someone higher than you decides it should. Your tasks are not complex, but they are relentless. Registers must align. Names must be copied exactly. Dates must match across multiple records that were never designed to agree. You learn to read quickly without appearing rushed. You learn to write clearly even when your hand cramps. The sound of brushes scratching paper becomes background noise, like rain that never stops. There's little room for error. A single misplaced character can change a tax obligation, a punishment, a land boundary. When mistakes happen, they are traced downward. You feel this pressure constantly. It tightens your shoulders, stiffens your neck. You stretch quietly when no one is watching. Pain is expected. Complaining about it would suggest weakness. Your superiors move through the office like weather systems. Some days they pass without effect. Other days they arrive suddenly, altering everything. A raised voice, a slammed tablet, a sharp question directed at no one in particular. You keep your eyes down and your posture correct. You answer when addressed and remain silent otherwise. Silence here is a skill. Money becomes a source of quiet anxiety. Your stipend covers basics, but official life demands more than basics. There are contributions for festivals, gifts for superiors on appropriate occasions, repairs to household items that cannot appear neglected. You learn to calculate constantly. Not just numbers, but impressions. How much can you afford without appearing stingy? How little can you give without appearing disrespectful? Your family feels the strain, though they rarely mention it. Meals become simpler. Clothing is mended rather than replaced. Servants are fewer than before. None of this is discussed openly. To discuss it would be to acknowledge that service does not bring comfort. That acknowledgement would sound dangerously close to complaint. Social gatherings continue, but they change in tone. You attend banquets where seating still reflects rank, but now you understand exactly what those placements mean. You sit far enough from the center to observe, close enough to hear fragments of conversation not meant for you. Laughter rises and falls. Decisions are hinted at between cups of wine. You listen carefully and remember more than you speak. At these gatherings, you are expected to perform ease, to look comfortable in your position, to joke lightly without offending, to drink, but not too much. Excess is noticed. Restraint is rewarded, though rarely openly. You return home from these events exhausted, in a way that has nothing to do with physical labor. Occasionally, your duties take you outside the office. Inspections, verifications, delivering orders written by someone else. These trips remind you that your authority exists only in context. Villagers bow because you carry a seal, not because they respect you personally. When orders cause hardship, they look to you for explanation, sometimes for mercy. You provide neither. You provide clarity. Clarity is safer. The road dust clings to your robe. The air smells of animals and soil. People watch you closely, trying to read your face. You keep it neutral. Sympathy can be mistaken for weakness. Coldness can be mistaken for cruelty. You walk a narrow line that leaves little room for relief. Back at the office, the pace never slows. Reports stack up, deadlines blur. You begin to notice how time behaves differently here. Days stretch long, but years pass quickly. Faces around you change. Some grow older alongside you, others vanish. New names appear, new handwriting. The machine continues indifferent to individual trajectories. You start to feel the mental toll more than the physical one. Your thoughts become procedural. You think in lists, in steps, in contingencies. Even at home, your mind runs through tasks unfinished, documents unchecked. Sleep is shallow. Dreams, when they come, are filled with corridors and papers that never end. Despite this, there's a strange sense of stability. You are needed. Not valued, but needed. The system relies on people like you to function. That reliance creates a fragile safety. As long as you remain competent and compliant, you're unlikely to be singled out. This understanding brings a muted comfort, though it also reinforces your confinement. You begin to see how easily people disappear when that balance breaks. A colleague speaks too boldly in a meeting. Another fails to deliver a report on time. Rumors circulate quietly, then stop. Their desk is cleared. Their name is avoided. No one asks questions. Asking questions implies concern, and concern can spread. This atmosphere shapes your behavior more than any written rule. You double-check everything. You avoid strong opinions. You frame suggestions as clarifications. You learn to let others take credit when it is safer. Pride becomes something you practice privately, if at all. There are moments when you catch your reflection and barely recognize the person you have become. Your posture is rigid even when relaxed. Your expression guarded. You look older than your years, not from hardship alone, but from constant restraint. You have learned to compress yourself into the space allotted. Daily life as a low-ranked noble official is not dramatic enough to be remembered by history. It does not produce legends. It produces records, ledgers, smooth transitions, the kind of continuity that allows empires to persist without noticing the people who make that persistence possible. You move through your days fulfilling expectations you did not set, enforcing rules you did not design, maintaining appearances you cannot abandon. There's no single moment where you feel broken. Instead, there's a gradual narrowing of choices, of energy, of hope. This is the quiet cost of your position. Not suffering that draws attention, but endurance that goes unnoticed. You are respected enough to be burdened and insignificant enough to be ignored. And tomorrow, like every day before it, you will wake early, dress carefully, and return to the office because this is what your life has become. Your first real collision with power does not come as a confrontation. It comes as proximity. You are close enough now to see how decisions are actually made, and far enough that you cannot influence them. This is the most uncomfortable position in the hierarchy because it strips away illusions without offering alternatives. It begins with assignments that place you just outside the inner circle. You're asked to prepare background summaries for meetings you will not attend. You draft reports that will be quoted by others, often without attribution. You are instructed to sit in the back of rooms where senior officials argue openly, their voices raised without fear. You remain silent, eyes lowered, absorbing more than you are supposed to acknowledge. The difference between rank levels becomes unmistakable here. High nobles do not speak carefully. They do not hedge every sentence. They interrupt. They contradict. They display impatience openly, and no one records it as a flaw. You realize that what you are taught as discipline is treated as weakness when practiced too strictly. Confidence is forgiven. Restraint is expected only from people like you. You notice how power shields behavior. A senior official can arrive late, misplace documents, or reverse decisions without explanation. You would be dismissed for the same actions. The rules you have followed for years are not universal. They are conditional, applied selectively based on name, lineage, and proximity to influence. This realization settles into you slowly, heavy, and unavoidable. There are moments when your work places you directly between authority and consequence. You are assigned to communicate unpopular decisions to local administrators. Tax increases, labor quotas, reallocations of land. The orders arrive neatly written, stamped with seals that carry undeniable weight. When you deliver them, you face the reactions meant for someone else. Anger, fear, quiet desperation. You listen without responding. Response is not part of your role. At times, higher-ranking officials test you. Not openly, but subtly. A suggestion made in private. A document that could be interpreted in more than one way. A pause that invites you to fill it. These moments are dangerous. Compliance might implicate you later. Resistance might be remembered. You learn to deflect, to ask for clarification. to delay just long enough for responsibility to move elsewhere. This is not cowardice, it is survival. You begin to see how networks operate beneath formal structure. Family ties, marriage alliances, old favors, shared histories. Official titles explain only part of what happens. Real power moves through relationships you were never invited to form. You are aware of them, but always at a distance, close enough to observe, too far to participate. Your status as a low-ranked noble makes this exclusion permanent. You are useful because you are educated, reliable, and expendable. You can be trusted with sensitive tasks precisely because you lack the influence to turn them into leverage. This is not said aloud. It does not need to be. Everyone involved understands it. The emotional cost of this position accumulates quietly. You carry knowledge you cannot act on. You hear discussions that contradict public proclamations. You witness compromises framed later as moral victories. Over time, the gap between appearance and reality widens. You adjust your expectations accordingly. Idealism becomes impractical. Cynicism becomes a private coping mechanism. There are days when the injustice feels sharp enough to provoke anger. Usually, these are days when consequences fall hardest on people with the least protection. A village fined beyond recovery. A family displaced by an administrative adjustment. A minor official punished to protect someone higher up. You record these outcomes without comment. Comment would change nothing and endanger you. Your family senses the change in you. You speak less at home. When you do speak, your words are careful, measured, drained of enthusiasm. You do not describe your work in detail. You do not want their expectations to rise or their worries to sharpen. They already know enough. Silence becomes another form of protection. Occasionally, you encounter someone from a great family who treats you kindly. These moments are disorienting. The courtesy feels genuine, but it does not alter the structure. Kindness from above does not translate into mobility. It only reinforces the distance. You accept it politely and move on, aware that gratitude must never turn into dependence. As your career progresses, you are trusted with more responsibility, but not more authority. You manage processes. You supervise lower officials. You ensure compliance. Yet any significant decision still requires approval from someone whose name carries weight. Your influence expands horizontally, never upward. This plateau becomes permanent. You begin to understand that the system is not designed to reward fairness or efficiency. It is designed to preserve itself. Stability matters more than justice. Continuity matters more than talent. You are part of the mechanism that ensures this continuity, even when it contradicts the principles you were taught. The internal conflict this creates is not dramatic. It does not lead to rebellion. It leads to compartmentalization. You separate personal belief from professional function. You perform your duties correctly while withholding emotional investment. This detachment allows you to continue without collapsing under contradiction. Still, the tension surfaces in small ways. A tightening in your chest during meetings. A bitterness that creeps into your thoughts late at night. A sense that your efforts are absorbed and erased simultaneously. You're close enough to see the levers of power move, but your hands never touch them. This proximity also reveals how fragile power can be. Senior officials fall abruptly. A shift at court, a scandal, a loss of favor. When it happens, the shock ripples downward. Policies reverse, alliances dissolve, careers end overnight. You learn to watch these changes carefully. Not out of interest, but out of necessity. Survival depends on anticipating instability. You are careful not to attach yourself too strongly to any one patron. Loyalty, you learn, must be flexible at your level. Too much devotion to a single figure can become dangerous when that figure loses standing. You cultivate neutrality. It is less admirable than loyalty, but far safer. By now, you fully understand your place. You are not powerless, But your power is narrow and conditional. You operate within corridors carved by others. You maintain systems you did not design. You witness truths you cannot speak. This is the reality of being a low-ranked noble inside an ancient state. The collision with power does not break you. It reshapes you. It teaches you what ambition must look like if it is to survive. Smaller, quieter, focused on endurance rather than change. You continue your service, not because you believe in what you see, but because leaving would cost you everything you still have. You remain where you are, carrying knowledge without agency, proximity without influence. This is not failure in the eyes of the system. It is fulfillment of purpose. And whether you accept it or not, the system continues to rely on you to hold the line between decision and consequence, unseen and unremembered. The crisis does not arrive as a single event. It arrives as accumulation. Small compromises layered over years, each one defensible on its own, together forming something heavier than you expected. By the time you recognize it as a turning point, you are already standing inside it. It begins with exhaustion that rest does not fix. You sleep, but you do not recover. Your body moves through routines automatically while your mind lags behind, replaying conversations and decisions long after they end. You notice how often your jaw is clenched, how your shoulders stay raised even when you are alone. These are not signs of illness, they are signs of adaptation. Your sense of loyalty starts to fracture quietly. Loyalty to the state once felt clear, almost abstract. Now it has faces. Families displaced by policies you processed. Minor officials punished for errors you know were inevitable. Orders written by men who will never witness the effects of their decisions. You still believe in order, but you are no longer sure whom that order serves. Family obligations complicate everything. Your parents are older now. Their expectations have not diminished, but their energy has. They speak of stability, of maintaining what has been achieved. They remind you of sacrifices made so you could stand where you are. You feel this weight keenly. Any risk you take is no longer yours alone. Failure would not just end your career, it would undo their careful lives. At the same time, your own household depends on you. Children, if you have them, grow up watching your restraint the way you once watched your father's. They learn which topics are safe and which are not. Your spouse understands the rhythm of your work without needing it explained. There is comfort in this shared understanding, but also a sense of enclosure. Everyone adjusts around the system rather than challenging it. Inside the office, pressure increases. Political tensions ripple outward from the center. Factions form and dissolve. You are asked to align subtly, to show support without declaring it. This kind of alignment is dangerous. Too visible and you become a target. Too hesitant and you appear unreliable. You learn to express agreement through tone rather than words, through timing rather than statements. Your conscience becomes something you manage rather than follow. You develop internal justifications. This decision prevents worse outcomes. That order will be softened later. This policy is temporary. These explanations are not entirely false. They are simply incomplete. You tell yourself that your presence moderates excess, that if someone else held your position, things might be harsher. This belief helps you continue. There are moments when the strain surfaces unexpectedly. A document crosses your desk that mirrors an earlier case, one you remember too clearly. A name resembles someone you once met in the field. For a moment, the distance between paper and consequence collapses. You pause, feeling the weight of your seal in your hand. Then you press it down. The moment passes, work continues. Colleagues notice the change in you, though they rarely comment. You speak less in meetings. When you do speak, your words are precise, stripped of anything that could be misinterpreted. You have become reliable in a new way. Not energetic, not visionary, but steady. This steadiness is valued, especially during uncertain times. It also makes you harder to remove. Fear changes shape as you age. Early in your career, you feared making mistakes. Now you fear being noticed. Visibility brings opportunity, but it also brings scrutiny. You have seen how quickly favor turns into suspicion, how praise becomes expectation, and expectation becomes vulnerability. Remaining unremarkable feels safer than advancement. You begin to understand how people become complicit without ever deciding to be. There's no moment where you choose corruption or betrayal. There are only moments where you choose continuity over disruption, survival over confrontation. Each choice feels reasonable. Together, they shape a life that no longer aligns neatly with the values you once memorized so carefully. At home, silence deepens. Not because of conflict, but because explanation feels pointless. Your family does not need to know every detail. Knowing would only burden them. You carry these tensions inward. They show up in small habits. Walking longer routes to avoid conversation. Sitting alone after meals. Staring at candle flames until the wax pools and hardens. You still perform rituals. You bow. You make offerings. You recite familiar lines. These acts provide structure when certainty erodes. They remind you that you are part of something larger, even if that something feels distant. Yet the comfort they once provided is thinner now. You go through the motions with skill, but less conviction. There's a growing awareness that time is working against you. Advancement opportunities narrow with age. Younger officials arrive sharper, more adaptable, often better connected. You train them, correct their work, watch them move ahead. You tell yourself this is natural. It is also difficult. You feel both relief and resentment when responsibility shifts away from you. Your internal conflict never resolves. It stabilizes. You learn to live with it the way you live with chronic discomfort. It flares occasionally, then recedes. You become adept at compartmentalizing. The part of you that once questioned becomes quieter. Not gone, just contained. You see how the system absorbs dissent. Those who push too hard are sidelined. Those who refuse compromise are isolated. You have learned to bend just enough to avoid both outcomes. This flexibility keeps you in place, but it also reshapes you. You are no longer the person your tutors imagined, nor the person your younger self expected to become. The crisis, when viewed from the outside, might not look like one at all. There's no scandal attached to your name, no dramatic fall. From the system's perspective, you are functioning exactly as intended. It is only from inside that the tension is visible. The constant negotiation between duty and self-preservation. You continue to serve, not because you believe the system is just, but because you understand it too well to leave. The cost of departure is too high. The path back does not exist. What remains is endurance, refined into habit. This is the quiet center of your life. Not triumph, not failure. A sustained effort to remain intact while carrying responsibilities that never quite belong to you. The system does not demand your happiness. It demands your compliance. And over time, compliance becomes the skill you have mastered most completely. Time does not mark your decline with ceremony. There's no clear moment when you realize you have reached the upper limit of what your life will become. Instead, the signs appear gradually, scattered across years, easy to dismiss until they form a pattern you can no longer ignore. Your hair thins. Your joints ache in ways that feel unrelated to weather or work. Long hours at the desk leave your back stiff, your hands slower than they once were. Younger officials move with an ease you no longer possess. They stand straighter, speak more quickly, adapt faster to changes in tone. You notice this not with bitterness at first, but with quiet recognition. Time has shifted your position without asking. Your career plateaus. Titles change slightly, enough to signal progression, but not enough to alter your influence. Each new appointment sounds impressive when announced, yet feels familiar once you settle into it. The responsibilities grow heavier, but the authority does not. You supervise more people. You review more documents. You are consulted more often, but always after decisions have already been shaped elsewhere. The system now treats you as reliable infrastructure. You are experienced, cautious, and unlikely to cause disruption. When instability arises, you are asked to maintain continuity. When younger officials make mistakes, you are expected to correct them quietly. You become a buffer between ambition and consequence. This role carries respect of a particular kind, but it does not carry power. Your presence in meetings shifts subtly. You're no longer there to contribute new ideas. You are there to ensure process is followed. Your voice, when it enters the discussion, often serves to remind others of precedent, of procedure, of limits. These reminders are tolerated, sometimes appreciated, but rarely embraced. Change comes from elsewhere. You manage its implementation. At home, the rhythms of life continue, altered but stable. Children grow older, parents pass away. Family rituals repeat with new faces filling old roles. You feel the weight of lineage more strongly now, not as aspiration, but as obligation. Maintaining the family's position becomes the primary goal. Advancement fades into something theoretical. Stability takes its place. You notice how your own expectations have changed. Earlier in life, you measured success by movement, promotion, recognition, influence. Now you measure it by avoidance, avoiding scandal, avoiding demotion, avoiding attention that could turn dangerous. This shift does not feel like surrender. It feels practical. You have seen too many people lose everything by reaching too far. The bureaucracy rewards this mindset. Your valuations are steady, your reputation solid. Words like dependable and experienced follow your name. These are compliments designed to anchor you where you are. You accept them politely. You understand what they mean. There are moments of reflection, usually during long evenings when the house is quiet and work finally recedes. You think about the choices you made and the choices you never had. You wonder whether a different path was ever possible, or whether your birth set the boundaries so firmly that everything else was just variation within them. The question has no practical answer. You let it drift away, the system continues to change around you. New policies, new priorities, new crises. You adapt as you always have. Adaptation has become second nature. You no longer resist the reshaping. You adjust your methods, update your language, learn new protocols. This flexibility keeps you relevant, but it also confirms that your role is maintenance, not direction. You watch younger officials rise past you. Some are more capable, others simply better positioned. You train them, advise them, sometimes protect them from errors that would have ended your own career at their age. They thank you respectfully, then move on. Their success does not diminish you directly, but it reinforces the ceiling you have lived under all along. Your body mirrors this plateau. It holds together, but no longer improves. Recovery takes longer. Fatigue settles in more easily. You pace yourself carefully now, aware that pushing too hard carries risks you cannot afford. Illness would invite scrutiny. Weakness would invite replacement. You manage your health the same way you manage your work. Quietly, preventively. Emotionally, something dulls. Not grief, exactly. More like distance. You are less affected by setbacks, less elated by minor successes. This emotional flattening is protective. It allows you to continue without being consumed by frustration or regret. You have learned how to make disappointment manageable by lowering its volume rather than confronting it directly. Your identity becomes closely tied to your function. You're introduced by your position more often than your name. When that position changes slightly, your sense of self adjusts with it. You no longer imagine yourself outside the system. The idea feels abstract, almost unreal. Retirement, if it comes, is a distant concept. For now, you exist to serve. The system, for its part, has no memory. It does not recall your early efforts or your years of consistency. It recognizes only current utility. As long as you fulfill that utility, you remain in place. When you no longer do, it will replace you without ceremony. You understand this fully now, and that understanding shapes every decision you make. You are not unhappy in the way stories often describe. There's no dramatic despair. Instead, there's a quiet narrowing of possibilities, a sense that your life has become defined less by what you do than by what you avoid. This narrowing is not imposed suddenly. It is the result of decades spent navigating constraints with care. Looking back, you see how the system has achieved its goal. It has extracted your competence, your patience, your adaptability. It has given you stability in return, but not significance. From its perspective, this is a fair exchange. From yours, it is simply reality. You continue to work, you continue to manage, you continue to maintain. The years pass, and with them, the expectation of change fades. What remains is endurance refined into habit, and a life shaped not by dramatic turns, but by steady, invisible pressure that has guided you exactly where you now stand. The end of your career does not announce itself as an ending. It arrives disguised as relief. Responsibilities ease slightly. Urgent matters are routed around you more often. Younger officials handle tasks that once would have landed on your desk without question. No one says you're being phased out. They say you are being spared. The distinction is polite and meaningless. Your body accepts this change faster than your pride. Mornings are slower now. Your joints protest when you rise. The familiar stiffness no longer fades after a few steps. You dress carefully, as you always have, but the mirror shows a man shaped by restraint rather than authority. Your posture is still correct. Your expression still controlled. What has changed is the weight behind them. At the office, your presence has become symbolic. You're consultative of memory rather than judgment. People ask how things were handled before, not how they should be handled now. You provide answers precisely, without commentary. Experience has taught you that advice offered too freely becomes inconvenient. You give what is requested and no more. Your desk is moved closer to the wall, not as punishment, as efficiency. Others need space for active work. You understand this without explanation. You reorganize your papers, discard old drafts, bundle records that will soon belong to someone else. The act feels administrative, not emotional, which surprises you. Detachment has done its work. When decisions go poorly now, they no longer touch you. When they succeed, your name is absent from the credit. This balance feels oddly fair. You have spent a lifetime operating between visibility and erasure. This is simply the final adjustment. At home, life simplifies. Children are grown or nearly so. They have learned the same careful habits you once learned, though the world they face is slightly different. You offer guidance sparingly. Too much instruction sounds like regret. You prefer to present your life as functional, even if incomplete. Let them decide what that means. Rituals take on new importance. Morning incense, seasonal offerings, quiet visits to ancestral sites. These acts ground you in continuity when personal significance fades. You find comfort in repetition. It reminds you that your existence fits into a longer sequence, even if your individual mark is faint. Illness becomes a possibility rather than a threat. You manage it quietly, the way you managed everything else. Treatment is careful. Absence is brief. You do not want to inconvenience anyone. Even now, usefulness defines worth. The habit is too deeply ingrained to abandon. Eventually, retirement is mentioned, not as an invitation, but as an option. The language is respectful. Your service is acknowledged in general terms. There's no detailed accounting, no summary of impact. You nod. You agree. The paperwork is prepared efficiently. Another seal replaces yours. The transition is smooth. That smoothness is considered a success. Your final days in office pass without ceremony. You clear your desk completely. No one stops you. No one asks you to stay longer. You walk the familiar corridors one last time, noting details you once overlooked. The way light falls through the windows, the sound of brushes moving in unison, the smell of ink that once defined your days. These sensations linger more than any memory of authority. Outside, the world continues unchanged. Markets are busy. Officials hurry past without recognizing you. This does not feel like loss. It feels consistent. You are never meant to be remembered individually. You are meant to function, then fade. In retirement, time stretches differently. Days are quieter, but not empty. You read, you walk, you attend rituals. People still greet you with respect, though it is softer now, less precise. Titles fall away. What remains is demeanor. You have been practicing it your entire life. There are moments when reflection sharpens into something uncomfortable. You think about what you sustained and what it sustained in return. You wonder whether your compliance made harm easier, or whether your restraint prevented worse outcomes. The question never resolves. It simply exists like a familiar ache. History will not record your name. It will record policies, reigns, reforms. The machinery you maintained will be described in broad strokes, its success measured by longevity rather than fairness. You understand this now without bitterness. Systems do not remember individuals. They absorb them. As age advances, your presence recedes further. You become a figure of quiet respect, then quiet familiarity, then quiet absence. When you are gone, rituals are performed correctly. Records are updated. Life continues. In the end, your story does not conclude with triumph or disgrace. It concludes with completion. You entered the system as a low-rank noble shaped by expectation. You spent decades maintaining structures you did not design. You leave having fulfilled the role assigned to you with consistency and restraint. And this is not a story meant to inspire. It is a story meant to explain how endurance looks when it is normalized. How lives can be spent holding things together without ever being visible at the center. You are not powerless. You are limited. And within those limits, you did exactly what the system required. The machine continues after you, as it always has. Somewhere another child is being trained to take your place. The lessons will sound familiar. The path will feel inevitable. And the cycle will repeat quietly, efficiently, without pause.